So we are going to build a server using Express, Node.js and TypeScript. So the first thing to do is to create a folder to host our API or our server as follows. The next thing will be to move to that folder or to open that folder in our code editor as follows. After opening our folder in a code editor, the first thing to do is to initialize a Git repository. So we do that by using the git command, which is so after initializing our Git repository for this API server, the next thing to do is to create a git ignore file. This file contains all the folders and files which are not supposed to be found on the public repository online or even a private repository. For example, environment variables, packages, and other private folders. For example, Node modules. This is the package folder which should not be pushed alongside the project code online. We also have the .env file which is not supposed to be pushed online as it contains private keys to our database and servers, addresses to our servers. We also have the dist folder which is obtained after compiling the code of our project. So we can save this. The next thing to do is creating our source folder. So in this source folder we can then create an index.ts file, which is this file is going to host our server. But before writing anything in this file, we need to install the necessary packages that are going to be useful in creating our server. These packages are TypeScript and Express.js. So we need to install them using the npm command. npm install express TypeScript types.express ts node to compile our TypeScript files. Install them. After installing the different files, the next thing to do is to create our server. Eventually we will you can start writing down the code necessary to create our server, which is as follows. First thing, we import our Express. We import Express from Express as we installed the package. Then we can create our server. But I'm going to do this using a class. So I'll declare a class called API server, and I'll give a private attribute which is equals to express. It is. Then every object needs a constructor. So we're going to have this constructor to help us initialize the object when creating the server. Next, we need a public function called start that will help us start our server once we have created it. So this function will be as follows. app.listen. We are going to listen on a particular port, which will be in this case port 5000, and the message displayed on the terminal when the server is actually up and running will be server running on port 5000. Good. One more thing we need to do is to create at least one route that would help us make sure that the server is reachable. I'll call this the health check, which is going to implement this route. So it's actually a get method, that is a get request on the health URL or on the health route, which is going to return an OK with the status of 200 when the server is up and running. Then for it to actually be reachable, we need to call this function in the constructor. So by doing this, we are calling this function, which eventually actually connects the health route to our server. Then finally, we need to create a server and start the server. Before we can actually compile and execute our index file, we need to configure our TypeScript file with the following command. We can do it automatically: npm init TypeScript, which is going to help us initialize our tsconfig file. Yes. This is actually completing our project package.json file with necessary information like the package name or the project name, the version, description, entry point, and many more information. Good. So if we check the package.json file, we can see there are some more information. So as we can see, our tsconfig file was created with some values. So the next thing we need to do is to install Node.js, as it is going to help us restart the server every time there is a modification, or every time a file is modified in our code. So finally we can add a script. In our package.json, which is going to help us launch our code or start our code in development mode. We are going to call this a dev command, and it will be node execute ts node source index.ts. Good. So by calling this command here, npm on dev, we are executing our index file, which is in the source folder, and if everything is okay, we are supposed to see server running on port 5000. But as you can see, we have here a clean exit waiting for changes before we start. So let's look at this. Okay, so the content of our folder was changed when we initialized the project. So I'm just going to do Ctrl Z, and we have our content back. So what do we have here? Okay, so we need to use this in our tsconfig.json. Okay, so good. Something done. So no more errors. We save this. Next error, what do we get? The request is declared, but its value is never read. So what we can do is, instead of writing request, we put an underscore and we save. So we have server running on port 5000. So we have our server up and running, and we can make a call on the health route by doing the following request. So let me create an HTTP file, test.http. so our host is http localhost 5000. Host is http localhost 5000, and we're going to perform a GET request on our host on the health route. Good. So that being said, we can then send the requests, and we have the answer okay, implying our server is up and running and is responding. We have the status 200, which is okay. So everything is functioning quite well. So this is how you can create an Express server and start it.